Welcome to drawing practice number 2. We'll be drawing a cylinder. Your vocabulary words are ellipse, contour, and foreshortening. Let's talk about foreshortening first. I'm going to start with a circle. That's a shape, right? But to show that that circle is, say, laying down flat, I use foreshortening, and my circle becomes an ellipse. You'll notice how this circle kind of looks like it's getting squashed. It also kind of looks like it's going back in space. That's because an ellipse is a foreshortened circle. I think it helps if we draw these arrows. So if here's the direction of my circle, these arrows show the direction of it as it lays down and becomes a foreshortened circle, which is an ellipse. Now, a quick note about drawing ellipses. Our ellipses shouldn't have these crisp edges. Remember to stand up and draw from your shoulder so you have some nice rounded ellipses. Okay, time to start our cylinder. Start by drawing one ellipse. On the long edge, draw 2 parallel lines down. And then draw a second ellipse at the bottom. You'll notice my ellipses are pretty similar. Okay, now this part gets a little bit tricky. We're going to mark our light source. Now let's think back to what we learned about light in our first sketchbook practice about spheres. So we're going to look at a view of the cylinder from the top. And if you look at it from the top, it looks like it's just a circle. So here's my light source. And I know that the point where the light source is directly hitting is called my highlight. And if I draw these diagonal lines out to meet the far edge, this is where my terminator is. So my terminator is the point where the form starts to turn away from the light. So I know everything on the other side of the terminator is going to be in shadow. Okay, so here are my terminator lines. And this point where the terminator line touches the bottom of my cylinder, that's where my value will be quite dark. So I'm starting with my lightest value, which I know is my highlight, where the light is hitting directly, and my darkest value, right where that terminator is. Then I'm going to blend using midtones between my darkest value towards my highlight, my lightest value. Take your time when you blend between these different values. You'll also notice that I'm not using a ton of straight lines. I'm kind of curving as I draw, and that helps to show the form. Now we can't neglect the top of the cylinder, which it's not going to be totally in shadow where we've put this light source, but it's also not the brightest part. Finally, we have to think about the shadow that's cast, or the drop shadow. So I'm just putting down a nice dark value for that. Let's review the vocabulary. So we drew an ellipse, and we know an ellipse can be a foreshortened circle. I want to focus on this middle vocab word, contour. We talked about kind of curving your lines as you were drawing, as you were shading. Let's look at what happens if I use straight lines. Do you see how at the bottom here, my cylinder is starting to look really flat compared to the top, where if I curve my lines, I can help to show that it's three-dimensional with the line direction that I'm using for my shading. So when we think about contour lines, we think about lines that follow the form and their direction kind of helps make things look more 3D.